Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. I have been very much looking forward to today's interview, and I have the one and only Coach Vince Dooley and his wife, Barbara Dooley, with me today. I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to spend with me today.
We're glad to be with you.
Thank you.
Awesome, of course. Well, so basically the way I want to start is kind of getting to y'all's early on in your relationship. So you've been going on 60 years of marriage as of in March, right? This upcoming month?
Yep. 60
Awesome.
years in March.
Awesome. Well, happy early anniversary. And to introduce you guys real quick, Coach Vince Dooley was the University of Georgia football coach for 25 seasons, also athletic director for about 25 years as well. Your record as a football coach was 201, 77, and 10 with 6 SEC championships and 1 national championship back in 1980. And Barbara, you're an author, speaker, you were a radio and TV personality, and you built a career as a realtor as well. But basically the way I want to start, like I said, is you guys met back at Auburn, of all places. And Vince, you were about 25 years old and an assistant coach there. And Barbara, you were in school, and you guys dated about one time a year for about 4 years, which is what I learned. And I kind of want to start by what was different about the fourth time compared to the first 3?
Well, I think she grew up by the 4th year. She was just a freshman when we dated the first time. I had finished school, had gone into the Marine Corps, and came back 2 years after active duty as an assistant football coach at Auburn, where we had attended. And I became the faculty chairman or counselor of the Newman Club, which was a church group. And I looked around at all of these co-eds, and I saw Barbara, who I thought needed counseling and advising more than any of the others. So I started trying to advise and counsel her as a freshman, but she didn't at least she started listening after 4 years, but she's yet to take my advice or my counseling.
That's awesome. So Barbara, what's your point of view here?
I was so totally confused by him, first of all, because he was 7 years older than me, and that was like an old man to me. You know, I'm 18 in college, and here's this guy that's been in the Marine Corps, finished college, and I'm going, what in the world? I don't date old men. And so finally.
Well, you kept coming back.
Oh, God, you kept asking. So anyway, all I can say is he is a great recruiter.
There you go.
It took him 4 years, but he did the job.
Well, good thing you got a little bit better, and it didn't take everybody 4 years to convince to come join you, right?
Right.
That's awesome. So next thing I kind of want to get into is at age 31, that's kind of when you first moved to University of Georgia and got hired as the head football coach. But you kind of had a decision to make, I understand, between a head coach at University of Georgia and then maybe being a coach over at Arkansas as well. So I just kind of want to ask a little bit what went into making that decision to going to coach for University of Georgia.
Well, that wasn't really much of a decision. My plan was to leave Auburn and go and be at Arkansas as an assistant coach under Frank Broyles, or go to Texas under Del Royal. I'd been at Auburn 8 years, and my plan was to leave and to coach under those 2 extremely well-known coaches and gain more experience. And then when Coach Jordan, who was the head coach at Auburn, retired, then I was hopeful they would call me back. So you never know when you're cast into a leadership role. So I've always felt like it's important that you are constantly preparing yourself for what your goals may be.
Or what might happen. Well, for sure.
Well, because you'll be cast into it, and as I was at an early age, and I fortunately was preparing myself for that opportunity. And So when I got it at age 31, long before that I thought I was ready to be a head coach, then there was no decision. You're going to be an assistant coach and turn down a head coach at an institution that had incredible resources and opportunities, and one that I was familiar with because we competed against Georgia when I was at Auburn.
Right. And so Barbara, what's kind of going through your head when this decision is being made that you guys are going to move to Athens and he was going to get the coaching job there? What's kind of going through your head about this decision?
Well, it was a unified decision, first of all. I want to make that clear.
It was?
But, yeah, I told you to go.
Oh, no. Well, I did ask you.
I know.
And that's when you said, I'll never complain again about coaching.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, that was the beginning of the bitching. Are you kidding me? The first year that he was at Georgia, I had 3 babies under 3, and he was home 52 nights out of the year.
Oh.
So I spent a lot of nights crying because he was not home. But, you know, he had prepared himself to be a head coach, but nobody can prepare you to have 3 babies under 3. It just throws you in the pot and says, do it.
Oh, yeah.
And be there primarily by yourself.
And then be alone. But it worked out great. The kids and I grew up together and had a good time. But I will say that when he did take the job, it was like good news and bad news. The good news was he's going to be the head coach at Georgia. The bad news was that all my friends were going to be in Miami at the Orange Bowl. We weren't going to be there.
When we came to Athens, we had an ice storm. And we were at the Holiday Inn in downtown Athens, and all the electricity went off. And, as Barbara mentioned, we had Deanna, the oldest one, who was about 2
and a half.
And then Daniel, the second one, was 6 months. And then she was pregnant with Denise, who was due soon. And Daniel was crying, and she was crying. So I took Deanna, and we went and had a candlelight dinner together. My little daughter,
2.5 years old, and left me in the room with a baby screaming, crying.
The next day, the electricity came on, so we sat there and watched the Orange Bowl. Auburn was playing, I don't know who, but the sun was shining, and here we are, iced in, and then she started crying again.
Well, and today I cry when I think about his first paycheck was $12,500 at Georgia, and the new coach is at $7 million. So that's a big discrepancy.
Yeah, a little bit. But you talked about how that first year he was home 52 nights out of 365 days a year, and obviously that probably got a little bit more and more as football season went on. But he was in a spot where he probably wasn't home as often as a lot of married couples are. So what are some maybe things that you guys did as a couple in order to stay close and keep that really strong relationship over kind of the coaching tenure?
Well, I can tell you one thing we did. We took a 2-week vacation together every year without children. And I would be right on the verge of saying, I'm not staying in this marriage. And then I'd figure out, that's why I married him. He's really great. And I'd come home renewed again. So it's amazing how much you love each other, but you don't realize it when you're in the daily grind.
So you kind of need to be able to step out of that daily grind to be able to realize it.
Get back to those formative dating years when you fell in love, and it just happens again.
Very cool. Very cool. So Coach Dooley, what are some of the maybe leadership changes that you had early on? Because like you said, you were a head coach at 31, so you had never had that experience before, probably trying to figure things out. So how did your leadership style and philosophy really change and evolve, especially over those first number of years?
Well, you constantly are growing,
Right.
Your job, and you're constantly growing as a leader. I was fortunate to have a good base because I was a Marine Corps officer, and there was a great deal of emphasis on leadership, on organization, on discipline, and all three of those are extremely important in the coaching profession, or in a lot of professions, as a matter of fact, but certainly in the coaching profession. So I did have a base, and I did have confidence because that I had that experience. That served me well early on. And then with time, I was able to grow and to be able to be better, and always striving to be better than what you were the year before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned discipline being obviously a huge aspect of leadership and a huge aspect of success in anything in life. How do you coach discipline to somebody?
Well, I don't know that you can coach it, but you need to be organized, and you certainly need to, if you're the person that's in charge, you need to be in charge. You set the standards, and while it's important that you communicate the standards of what you expect, it's most important that you set the proper example of the standards that you have set personally. And I think that in itself, again, helped me when I started out. And it's because not only was I dealing with 100 and something football players, but I had about 12 coaches that were ones that were kind of like NCOs, if you would have related to military, in which they were on the field. They did a lot of the work. Most of your work was done in meetings and setting an organization as to how we're going to go about doing things and what our standards are going to be.
Gotcha.
Then you have to be an example of those, not just talk about them.
But again, you followed through. If he said this would happen if this doesn't take place, it happened. He didn't throw out wild statements. He backed up everything.
I love that. Do you think that was maybe, I wanted to ask this question anyway. Do you think the kind of showing his own personal discipline and following through on those things, do you think that was like his strongest leadership quality? Or if not, what was maybe his strongest leadership quality?
Well, I think his strongest leadership quality is, if I say something, you better darn well listen to me. But he meant business. He had goals. He set his goals. And let me say this, he never varied from reaching those goals. And it's amazing. So many of us set goals and something puts a snag in the road and we forget it. Well, he didn't. Those snags were just impetus for him to continue stronger.
But at the same time, you grow, and as you set your goals, and you're determined and you're focused, which is extremely important to achieve that goal. But as you go along, you grow as a person, you grow as a leader, and hopefully each and every year you get better at what you do.
So do you guys set, like, both of you guys are very successful individually in your own rights and successful as a parenting couple. Do you guys set goals for yourselves as a couple or yourselves as a family and that sort of thing?
Well, I don't know so much about goals, but the best way to approach that is that in deciding the person that you want to spend your life with, it's important that you share basic values. And by sharing those basic values, then you're able to work out the goals. But the goals are within the values that you share. And so it's extremely important that when you start off, make a commitment as partners that you both have established through growing up and the particular religion or particular place that you live, that you share some basic goals, which we did, and they were primary goals. Now, there are other things that you try to work out as you go along. In fact, we've been married 60 years and we're still working at a few things that we need to work out. But the base is there, and as long as the base is there, you can work out those other things.
Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, obviously such an important conversation to have with a significant other. So kind of on that topic, Barbara, is there a specific conversation that maybe you guys have had at some point during these 60 years that you see as maybe one of the most important conversations that you guys have had?
Well, I think the most important was to decide to marry each other. But we have, as he said, we have had so much agreement just in the way we grew up. But I think one thing that made our marriage work was, first of all, I wanted him to succeed, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help him, and I still do. And I felt the same way. I never said to him, would you help me be the best I can be? I watched him be the best he could be, and I was hell-bent on being the best I could be. And so we helped each other without really sitting down talking about it. But I ran for Congress once. I've done everything you could. I mean, I have really stretched my wings, and only because he encouraged me to do it. He never once said no. And there were so many times I would have wanted him to say, I don't think that's a good idea, but he didn't. He let me be myself. And I know a lot of times I embarrass him because I talk too much, and I have a personality that he doesn't have, and he sometimes doesn't understand my humor, but he lets me be me, and I let him be him. And I think that's a strong key, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's important that if she has a goal, if she wants to do something, and sometimes I might not agree, but if I can see that she is set in what she'd like to do, then I don't try to restrict. If you want to do it, do it. And so she's tried
a bunch of stuff,
a lot of things, and she enjoys life. We're certainly different in a lot of ways. I said many times that she has one of the qualities that's appealing to a lot of people, and that is that she has thoughts, but they're not thoughts that she just thinks. She expresses those thoughts without a lot of hesitation.
Which gets me in a lot of trouble most of the time.
The idea that you don't have a filter on your thoughts, so you just come out. Well, that's a great trait, but at times it does get her into some problems, and particularly with me.
That's right.
That's funny. That's funny. I love it. So, Coach Dooley, one of the most important things of forming a successful team is creating kind of a dynamic within the team itself and this culture of kind of trust and amongst all the individuals. What are some maybe things that you did as a coach to help foster that team chemistry in the locker room and foster that team culture that would lead to success?
Well, I think again, it's an overall philosophy that I committed myself to Georgia. I had spent 12 years of my life as a student and a coach at a rival school, and now I go across the Chattahoochee and I become the head coach of our rivals. But once I made that commitment, it was extremely important that I totally commit myself to that. And the way you do that, you learn about the tradition, you learn about the history, you got a better understanding of the background of an institution, what it stands for. And you become absorbed and part of that, and hopefully to be able to add to that tradition and to build on that tradition, but with a great appreciation for what was already there. So that was kind of a base philosophy that I had. And I felt like that came through to those that were part of our team. And by part of the team, that means all the coaches and all the trainers and all the managers and all the players. All of them were part of the team family. And we spent a lot of time on working on team, doing things together, and having certain goals. We used to I had a good staff. People always said, well, you always had a good staff. Yeah, why wouldn't I have a good staff? You want to have the best people working with you, and possibly. And one was a fellow named Herschel Russell. That was another Auburn man, so to speak, who became committed to Georgia, as I did. And he was a unique individual, and he had his own way of doing things. And I think that idea of Barbara, letting her be herself, I did that in many ways with our coaches. Let them coach, all within the framework of building team together and working together and having respect for each other. So we had a saying, as we found so many ways to emphasize team, Ert came up with these T-shirts, because I always preach team. And he came up with one that says, big team, little me. In big 12-inch letters is the word team. And under that was, in little 1 or 2-inch letters, was me. So it's the relative importance of me as an individual to the team. And we all wore those shirts, the players, the managers, the trainers, and all the coaches, including me. So you had to commit yourself in a basic philosophy, which is true of any organization that works together, that has unity of purpose. And that's what team is all about. And that's what football is, more of a team sport than any sport, because it takes so many people to make an organization and a productive team out on the field, because they're all working together and they have unity of purpose in what they're doing.
No doubt. I love those shirts too. The big team, little me. I've seen those so many times and heard that so many times. So to hear the story of how it was created was super cool. So I think people would be really mad at me if I didn't ask anything about Herschel Walker. So is there like a favorite Herschel Walker memory or anything like that, or favorite Herschel Walker story or anything that would be most important?
Well, most of them were great, but Barbara would have one that how Herschel came to Georgia that she didn't think was too good at the time that it happened. And you might want to tell them about it.
Oh, well,
Okay.
we had planned a family trip over Easter, and we were driving to Boston to see my brother, who was in medical school up there. And then we were going to New York and take the kids to a play. I had everything ready to go. And the night before I was packing to leave, he says, Barbara, I don't think I can go. I said, what do you mean you can't? What do you mean? And he says, Herschel hadn't signed yet and I can't go. I said, to heck with Herschel. Who in the heck does he think he is that he hadn't signed?
And I said, I don't know who he thinks he is, but I know who I think he is.
Yeah.
And I'm not going.
And I'm not going. Well, now I am left. My oldest daughter is in college, so she's not going with us. So I have 3 kids, only one that can drive. And now I have got to drive to Boston and do all this with my children, which turned out to be great. We had a ball. But Easter Sunday morning, he called me. We were in New York. And he said, well, Herschel signed.
Oh my gosh.
So he signed on Easter Sunday, and I have never let Herschel forget that. And he screwed up our family trip.
It was the long run.
It was worth. I know who Herschel thinks he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say you've probably forgiven him for not coming on the family trip at this point.
Maybe that's right.
That's hysterical. So what was maybe the turning point then to get Herschel to commit to Georgia?
Well, I think that everybody in the country had signed, and he was so all of the attention turned to him because he was actually the #1 recruit in the country, and which means that everybody thought he was going to be a great player. There wasn't anybody that didn't. But I might also add, while we're talking about Herschel, that Herschel was part of perhaps the best recruiting class we ever had, because that class over a 4-year period was 43-4-1.
Wow.
Which was the best record of any team in the country over a 4-year period. But what's interesting about it is that we signed Herschel, the #1 recruit in the country. We also signed a fellow named Terry Hogue, that was the least recruited player in the country. And that was one that didn't have a scholarship anywhere else except at Georgia. And he was from Huntsville, Texas. Both of them became consensus All-Americans. Herschel for 3 years and Terry Hogue for 2 years, but he also became an academic All-American for 2 years.
In genetics.
Well, yeah.
Genetics.
It didn't make it what he was in. He was going to score 100. He had about a 97 average in genetics when he was there. So he was a brilliant individual, which helped him to be a great football player. And also, he played pro ball for 13 years, which is amazing.
And now he grows wine grapes. He has his own vineyard. And he takes his genetics and makes his wines. How about that?
But they were the easiest that I've had to coach, because they had great pride in themselves. They wanted to be good. They worked at it. You never had to to say anything about you need to pick it up. If anything, I had to kind of slow them down because they were always going at full speed. And so they were the easiest 2 players that I ever coached. And Herschel, of course, had an incredible record, and Terry Hogue did also.
And Herschel has the worst eating habits of any human alive. And when he was playing ball, he did not eat breakfast. He ate Snicker bars for lunch and Snicker bars for dinner. And
his eating habits weren't
they were
good,
terrible.
but they weren't that bad. I mean,
yeah, they were.
Snickers all the
Well, let me say, we were in New York in a limo one day he was getting an award, Herschel was. And I'm lecturing him on his food habit. And Vincent said, would you leave him alone? Whatever he's eating, it's good, whatever it is.
Right. He's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right.
Well, I think one of the most impressive things about Coach Dooley, you, is that the sustained excellence that you had over such a long period of time. So kind of on that topic, what is maybe one of the keys to having sustained excellence over your career?
Well, I fortunately had a desire to have a complete athletic program. So while I was a football coach, and because I played basketball in college, I was a starter as a sophomore, and then tore up my knee in football and in basketball. So I had a great appreciation of basketball and really loved basketball. That I wanted to see whatever we did, I wanted to be good at it. And it was at a time when there were a lot of issues that were coming on in intercollegiate athletics, specifically in our case, Title IX, which was the emergence and the opportunities for women's sports. And I think that we got a good jump on a lot of schools because early on, we kind of set a philosophy that whatever a men's sport has, then a women's sport should have the same thing, be it the best coaches, be it the best facilities, be in the scholarship numbers, or whatever it is. We tried to balance that off. And by adopting that philosophy early, I think we got a jump. We got good coaches, and some of them are still coaching. They've won numerous national championships. So I think it's a question of that whatever you do, you want to do it well. And I think back to my parents. I had two wonderful parents that really didn't have any formal education. Neither one of them finished grammar school, but they had some basic values that helped me. I can still hear my daddy saying, anything that's worth doing, it's an old saying, is worth doing well. And it always stuck with me. I always remember my mother saying, manners will take you where money won't. That didn't jive quite as well, but at the same time, it was a base value that was important to me that I learned from them. And so we were fortunate, and whatever we did, we strove to do it good, to be really good, to be the best we could be at it. And I think that helped us a lot, particularly in the challenge of women's sports.
Nick, thank you so much for inviting us to join you today. You are really good at what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I have one last question for you guys. But before I ask it, is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I ask it, I want to acknowledge you guys real quick. First, Coach Dooley, I really love the team over me thing. I think that's something that really a lot of people kind of know, but until you actually say it and make it such a part of intentionally make it such a part of your culture, that's when people really start to embody that. And I think that's something that was really important for your sustained excellence over such a long period of time. And probably such a big role in the sustained excellence of you guys as a couple as well, always looking at you guys as a family and how you can be successful. And then you guys are always supporting each other back and forth. That's really inspiring and something that I hope I can find in a significant other someday.
Well, just be a good recruiter and keep your eye open for the best.
Awesome. Well, the last question is, I think that becoming the best version of yourself is a constant journey. Like you guys have said, you want to always continue to grow and always continue to learn. And I also think it's a unique journey. I think the way that I become the best version of myself is going to be a little bit different than the way that you guys become the best version of yourselves. So for you guys, if you could currently do or currently work on 3 things to get closer to the best version of yourself, what are 3 things that you guys could do or work on to get closer to the best version of you?
Okay, Barbara.
I knew he was going to do that to me. Give me patience. That would be the first thing I would need. I really have a hard time tolerating people that don't know what they're doing and they're fumbling around. So patience. The second thing would be to maybe take a cooking course. I would love to take a professional cooking course.
But she's pretty good at it. She's just had her own course because she'll try anything.
I will.
And the good thing about her trying anything is that she's got somebody that likes to eat. And so I'm a great test for whatever you cook. So, and she's gotten quite good at it.
Thank you. And then I guess the third thing that would make me a better person is if I could communicate less and listen more.
I like it. Those are good. Those are good ones. You got a lot to live up to, Coach.
Yeah. Well, I've always found, because we've had the great privilege of living around a university. In fact, 3/4 of my life, and Barbara's as well, is that we've been around a university of higher education. And there's great opportunity by being around a university and great benefits. And one of them is that if you have a curiosity for anything, that you can satisfy it, because there's an expert on just about anything there is at a university. And I've always been a curious person, and I always grew in learning. When I went off to college, I can't say that I went off strictly for academics. I mean, I went off because I had a scholarship, and that's the only way I could ever go to college. And then as I went there, and as I learned that there was more and more out there.
He can't just answer a question.
So I kept learning. So I still do that today. I take courses, audit courses in history. We used to travel all the time, which we really enjoy doing. And we'd go to these museums and come back and not sure what we saw. So we came back and took an art history course. And then I've taken, I was always curious about trees and plants. So I took a course in tree identification. And one course led to another. That became a wonderful learning experience for me. So what I do have is I've got a sign that I keep in my 2 offices, and it says, "I'm still learning. Age 87, Michelangelo." Now, I'm about as opposite as Michelangelo as anything could possibly be, except one thing. I'm 87 years old, the same as he, and I'm still learning. And that's the inspiration. And that's what I want to do. And I want to continue to learn as long as I'm around.
That's only one thing to make you better. That took 30 minutes.
That's all right. That's important. And whatever the one thing is, continue to love you. The third thing is spend the rest of my life with you. So you got it all right there.
There you go. That's awesome.
This is how we live.
Hey, it's awesome. It's awesome. Oh my gosh, that was great. That was great. Like you said, he likes to give background for.
Oh yeah.
Because it gives emphasis to it. It gives emphasis to it, and it's obviously important. It's obviously important to him and everything like that. Well, thank you guys so much. That's all we got. That was so awesome, and I really appreciate you guys.
Great being with you.
Good being with you, Ned.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, you're doing
Thank you.
good. Thank
you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.